You know the vibes. Welcome back. I know you guys thought you might not hear that again. You know I ain't ever gonna leave you. Welcome back to another episode of the Hoop Genius podcast, brought to you by NBA 2K25. It is myself, Mooncey, and let me give you guys the update. Because it feels like it's been forever since I did a podcast, but it's only really been a week. 1 week ago, first and foremost, I have to congratulate my OG, my brother, as a family, me and you guys, the listeners, our uncle, Mr. BJ Armstrong. A huge congratulations. He has been hired as the assistant general manager of the Sacramento Kings, where he will be teaming up with general manager extraordinaire, Mr. Scott Perry. So the boys are over in Sacktown. I'm still here with you guys, though. I've been getting a lot of messages. I want to thank each and every one of you who reached out to me. I went off the radar for a week. I got a lot of messages from you guys, and I'll get back to all of you guys. I'm going to try and reply to everyone, asking where I've disappeared to. You guys are asking if I'm in Sacramento. You guys are asking a whole bunch of questions. All I can say is stay tuned. BJ is going to be back at some point. So is Scott. Don't worry. The team is still going to be rocking. For the meantime, though, I'm going to be rocking with you for the rest of the playoffs and beyond. And we're going to have some special guests. We're going to keep this party going on because, I can't just leave you guys in the middle of the playoffs. Why did I disappear for a week? Well, this is episode number... What is this? Episode number 693. We've been doing a daily podcast. If you guys don't know, I'm based in the UK, which means right now it's 5 a.m. The games begin at midnight. I watch all the games. They usually finish around 5, 6, 6:30 sometimes. If there's overtime, sometimes 7. Then I do the podcast, edit the podcast, talk to my team and so on and so forth. Then finally try and get some sleep, even though it's broad daylight outside and everyone started their day. I took a week off because, well, like the scene where, what does Thanos say in that scene? Where he goes and sits on the porch and he goes, I finally rest and watch the sun rise on a grateful universe. That's how I felt because both my dogs are back in the league. Everyone gassed up LeBron last year when his podcast partner got hired as a coach. I'm waiting for everyone to gas me up when my 2 podcast partners get hired as executives. See, BJ ain't here today. There's no one here to keep me humble. I'm going to talk my You know what I'm saying, gang? But none of this would be possible without you guys tuning in, of course. So I just want to thank each and every one of you on behalf of not just myself, but Scott and BJ as well, for always supporting the show, showing up, showing love. And let's break down some basketball, because I know that's what you guys are here for. A lot of people thought that I was offline and not tweeting and not posting and not doing pods because of the Celtics being so utterly miserable. However, that was not the case. That was just an unfortunate coincidence. I've been working on a few things that you guys are going to see soon, so stay locked in for that. But speaking of the Celtics and the pain and the misery, let's talk about the Boston Celtics, who tonight will be facing elimination at the hands of the New York Knicks. Just 12 months ago, they were on course for the NBA Finals, winning banner number 18. This season, I'm pretty sure the New York Knicks are going to win this game. Jason Tatum obviously out with a torn Achilles. He had surgery on it earlier today. Unless, Jaylen Brown, the finals MVP, gives us a game. I remember the year where Jaylen missed the playoffs because of an injury. Jason stepped up and won a game in Brooklyn. That was the year Brooklyn were really good. And almost, if KD didn't step on the line, would have beaten the Bucks on their way to a championship. Let's see what JB can do. But I want to talk about the Celtics this year. And there are 2 things that I want to talk about. Let's start on the defensive side of the basketball, right? If you look at numbers, and this is why I hate looking at numbers for defense, right? Their defensive rating in the playoffs this year is better than the defensive rating in the playoffs last year. So the numbers don't tell the full story, but with numbers, there's a way of kind of narrowing it down, and it matches the eye test of what you see. In the fourth quarter, the Celtics are giving up way more points this season in the fourth quarter. I think they have a 117.3 defensive rating in the fourth quarter, meaning in the fourth quarters they give up, if there was 100 possessions played at fourth quarter basketball, 117 points. Last year was 113. So their defensive intensity down the stretch has been a real worry for me. It just feels like the defense, it works really well for stretches. Usually in the first half, they're locked in. They're doing what they do. They're disrupting the other team. They're getting turnovers. They're going in transition. They're forcing misses. They're running off misses. This season, it just didn't feel the same, and I chalked a lot of that down to, yeah, they'll just turn up when they're ready. But as we know, in the NBA, you can't just turn up the dial. So defensively, that's the issue. The other issue with the defense this season, I know they didn't have Porzingis for a lot of their playoff run last year, but you got to think about it. Al was a year younger with a whole lot less mileage on his body. It was just more locked in. I don't know what Porzingis' illness is. No one knows what his illness is, but he's clearly not playing the way that he's played. And I'm not doing excuses. I'm just doing facts. Jaylen Brown, his knees not look the same, even though he's out there still playing. Jason Tatum obviously had the wrist injury in round 1 that kept him out for a game, and that's affected him, and now he's out. So we're not going to go down that route because I'm talking about the Celtics defensive rating. However, in last year's playoff run, I don't know if they faced a stone cold killer in the fourth, like Jalen Brunson. I know they faced Luka and Kyrie in the finals, but let's be honest, the finals weren't even close. But Jalen Brunson, this is what I say to people when I'm watching the Celtics. They've got to be up by at least 20 going into the fourth. If the Knicks get it to a 10-point game, they believe, to be fair, if they get it to a 20-point game, they believe they can get it down to 10. When it's 10 points going into the fourth, they know they can get that down to 6 points. That's a 2-possession game, and they believe in Captain Clutch. And you know what? When BJ and I spoke about this a few weeks ago, when we said, who do we want taking the last shot of the game with the ball in their hands, and we said Kawhi and Luka, I think Jalen Brunson must have heard that and took it personally, because this man, what he does in the fourth quarter, unbelievable. Also in the most recent game, Mikal Bridges finding space in the mid-range. When they were guarding him with Derek White, the advantage he's got is height and wingspan. He's using that to score a lot more in the mid-range, and that was great for them. So I've got to credit the Knicks. I'm not going to make excuses for the Celtics, because speaking of defense, the Knicks throughout the regular season were kind of an average defense. We were always talking about this on the show. We were like, for a Tom Thibodeau team, their defense ain't a Tom Thibodeau team. Little did we know that they were just saving it for the playoffs, because their defense, when they go on these runs, has been absolutely sensational. That's where it all begins. A lot of people think the Celtics shooting threes is why they lose. I've said this before, and I'm going to say it again. The Celtics shooting threes is not why they lose. The reason they lose is depending on the type of threes that they generate. When they drive and kick and move the ball and they're playing that Spurs type basketball where everyone gets a touch and you find the open shooter, you pass up a good shot for a great shot, shoot all the threes you want. But if you're just going to dribble, sidestep three over a defender, that ain't the threes we're looking at. So I looked into the numbers. The Celtics attempt the most threes after 7+ dribbles on a possession, and the 5th lowest three out of all the teams in the playoffs after 0 dribbles, which means their catch and shoot rate is very low. Last year, they were the 3rd highest in those 0 dribble 3-pointers. So a guy just catching the ball and letting it fly. And they had almost half the amount of threes coming after 7 dribbles. The Celtics offense looks so stale at times, where either it's Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, or other guys on the roster just simply dribbling up. They get kind of trying to force these mismatches against Cat and try and exploit them. However, settling for the 3-pointer is not ideal in those situations. And bear in mind, when you get a mismatch on Karl-Anthony Towns and now he's guarding Jason Tatum out on the perimeter, that means Jalen Brunson's hiding somewhere. Drew Holiday is one of the best post-up big guards in the league. Jaylen Brown, elite on the post-up as well. Al Horford, if he's been guarded by a small player, he can score on the post. And it's just like, we're looking at the wrong mismatch. And this is something that's irked me for years, and it's going to continue to irk me. But the type of threes that the Celtics are settling for is the reason why they're losing. The Celtics have one of the lowest rates of attempting shots in the paint. And in order for those threes to be great, you have to be applying pressure on the rim, because that's what forces the defense to collapse and get those 3-pointers open. But if you're not getting those field goals in the paint, then they can guard you out on a 3-point line. The Knicks guards are doing great jobs of kind of helping a little bit in the gaps and then rushing out to close out on 3-point shooters. I know in game 1, the Celtics shot a whole bunch of open threes, but Knicks have done a better job. But it's like, where the shots are coming from is the biggest issue for me. It's how they're generated. If it's team basketball, fantastic, shoot 63s. If it's isolations into 3-pointers, I don't want to see that. Like, it's important to have that in your locker, but that can't be the bread and butter of your offense. Numbers-wise, when you really look at the numbers, they attempted, I think, more threes last year. Their percentage that they're shooting at is roughly the same. But in the fourth quarter, we're attempting way more threes. I say we like I'm on a team. The Celtics are attempting way more threes in the fourth quarter than they did last year, and they're converting at a lower percentage. So it's that late game execution. And, you know, we've done almost 700 episodes with BJ. And I'm going to tell you exactly what he's thinking right now, right? It's Jason Tatum, instead of operating at the top, dribbling, trying to find a three-pointer, he needs to be operating off the elbow, off the mid-post, because that's the only space on the floor where they can't double-team you, and Jason Tatum has become such an elite passer that if you had been running that fourth-quarter offense through Jason Tatum in one of those operating areas, you would have generated way better looks for your team, because no one can hold him one-on-one. I mean, OG's done a great job, Bridges has done a good job, I'm not going to lie about that, but that's on the way that they're playing now. If we're getting different looks, the whole thing changes. So the offense is really, and it's like, where do you put the blame, right? Because you can't blame Joe Mazzulla, because when they play his style of basketball, they win, as you saw last year. I don't think Joe Mazzulla is in the locker room and in the huddles telling them to shoot a bunch of threes where they just dribble into them and it's late in the shot clock and they're throwing up bricks. I don't think that's what he's encouraging them to do. And then you're going to blame the players. Like the Celtics shot 20% better on corner threes last year than they did this year. But last year, I remember Drew Holiday shot like 60% on corner threes last year. That was obviously not going to be sustainable. So maybe last year they just had a historic shooting year. This year they obviously made more by volume, but they're taking more. So it's a very, very interesting place to be, especially when you look at the future of the team, because now Jason Tatum's out with that Achilles injury. He may miss the entirety of next season, and we don't know what kind of player he'll be when he gets back. Hopefully he makes a full recovery, but we know with Achilles injuries, it's very, very tough. And this team was always going to break up. This was their last run at it. They're being sold. New owners are coming in. The second apron and all the problems that the new collective bargaining agreement factors in, to the point where we knew this team was breaking up, and it was just a hope of, can they go back to back before they have to break up the team? The obvious points to look at here is moving off Porzingis and Drew Holiday's contracts, but realistically, with the way Porzingis has played in these playoffs, and by the way, the Celtics aren't eliminated yet. They might do the impossible, but let's just be realistic. I'm just breaking down as if they've already lost tonight. I don't know how much trade value Porzingis hold. Maybe we can flip him for Marcus Smart again. Drew Holiday as well doesn't hold the same amount of value because he doesn't quite look like the same player that he did previously. Teams that came out today in reports were the Houston Rockets and the San Antonio Spurs. I would keep an eye on Jaylen Brown and the Houston Rockets maybe. But, you know, it's going to be interesting to see the direction of this team. Are they going to do what the Spurs did with Tim Duncan and tank for a year and get AJ DeBanza in the draft next year and keep the dynasty rolling? I don't know. We're going to have to wait and see. But all I do know is they won't be the favorites for the championship next season. The roster won't look the same as it did this season. They've got a lot of guys making a lot of money. And this season, in the postseason, they've not produced the results. So that is the Celtics. I know a lot of you wanted me to have a breakdown, and I think someone put in a Discord a therapy session about the Celtics, but I'm just realistic about it. They are who they are. They play the way they play. However, against the Knicks, they've not been playing the way they play. The first round was interesting against Orlando because they have a kind of a very different defensive scheme. But the Celtics have not been playing what I call Celtic basketball in this series. They've been settling. That's the word I would use. They've been settling way too much on offense, and the defensive intensity has not been there. But the Cleveland Cavaliers have been eliminated as well. So that's the top two seeds in the East. The Cleveland Cavaliers lost at the hands of the Indiana Pacers. And I think even though the Celtics took down the Pacers in the conference finals last year pretty easily, none of the games really felt easy. The Pacers are actually a really good team. And I think one of the reasons no one spoke about them is because they got off to a rough start to the year, in particular Tyrese Halliburton. However, he's turned that overrated label upside down, and now maybe he's underrated, because what they've been doing against the best team in the regular season, the Eastern Conference, the Cleveland Cavaliers, has been absolutely special. And with the Cavaliers, it's tough for them because really this was their year. Because there aren't too many moves they can make now. This was their year. They got the coach of the year, they got the defensive player of the year, and they went out there and they got whooped. And I know injuries factor in as well, but that feels like it applies to every series. So, you know, the Cavaliers, they're just going to have to try and run it back. And Jarrett Allen can't say the lights were too bright this time. I kind of feel bad for them. I'm happy for the Pacers because shit, doing a solo podcast is thirsty work. This is 15 minutes of just monologue. I ain't got BJ chiming in right now. The Indiana Pacers, they have great depth. They play with a great pace. And you know what I talked about a couple of weeks ago on the show? We're talking about the weak links and like who do you target? I want to credit Tyrese Halliburton not just for the offense, but also what he's been doing on defense. Not that he's been an insane all-world defender, but as in he's not been that weakness that you can target relentlessly over and over again. And Rick Carlisle does a great job of managing his rotations, getting fresh legs in the game. They've got great guys coming off their bench. You've got Obi Toppin, you've got TJ McConnell, you've got Benedict Mathurin. I love what the Pacers are doing, and I think the Knicks should be a little bit afraid of them in the next round because their depth is, well, I mean, I think the Knicks have decent depth. They just never use it. So it's going to be very interesting, that matchup. We'll talk about that once the Celtics have got eliminated. But what else? We're catching up. The Wolves and the Warriors. Obviously, no Steph Curry. There's not too much to talk about there. Jimmy Butler had an illness or something, I think. That's why he wasn't playoff Jimmy, as they say. I don't know. It's a tough break for the Warriors. It's a real tough break for them. But Ant-Man, I think I saw a stat today that he's like the 5th highest in NBA history in 30-point games before the age of 25, maybe. Ant-Man is that guy. And I would like to take this chance to do a victory lap. Julius Randle. You know, everyone else loved to criticize Julius Randle. Everyone had a lot to say about Julius Randle. On this show, Mr. Perry especially told us the truth about Julius Randle, and he showed up in a big way in this year's playoff run for the Minnesota Timberwolves. So shout out to Julius Randle, shout out to Ant-Man, the entire Timberwolves team. They're doing their thing. Obviously, it's a shame Steph's out with an injury. I think he's going to be back. If they can extend the series, he'll be back. But speaking of extending the series, the Denver Nuggets and OKC Thunder were locked in at 2-2. And, you know, before the game, I saw an article from someone at ESPN about Russell Westbrook calling him immature and this and that. And I just want to know, like, why does the media hate Russell Westbrook so much? Because I talk to a lot of people around the league. I don't know many people that would describe Russell Westbrook as immature. I think, and they quoted like an anonymous teammate. I think that's the most cowardly thing ever. I think either that's a lie and it's bad journalism, or it's out of context and they've not conveyed the tone or whatever. I don't know what it is, but I don't believe it. But Denver almost took the win in OKC in Game 5. However, Lou Dort came up huge down the stretch. He hit a few very timely three-point shots that got the Thunder back in the game. I think they were down double digits going into the fourth. He played great, and the OKC defense was just relentless. And I think, you know, we talk about these young teams and do they have the experience? I think that they are gaining so much experience on the fly, because had this game been a week ago, I think they would have lost it. But they've taken their losses. They've figured out the late game execution. They figured out their game plan against the Denver Nuggets. And, you know, Jalen with an I, has been great in you know, matching up with Nikola Jokic, even though they don't show up really in the box score. But the Thunder, once again, we talked about the Pacers and the depth. The Thunder are a team with similar depth, and you're seeing now depth is winning out more than a top-heavy roster with superstars. So, you know, shout out to the OKC Thunder. Once they close out that series, we can talk more about them. But a big topic that everyone was talking about is the draft lottery. Is the Dallas Mavericks had a 1.8% chance to win the NBA draft lottery, and a lot of people have conspiracies about the NBA draft lottery. And I'm not going to comment on them. I'm just going to say this. If I had a team and I had a superstar and I wanted to go into a rebuild, I would simply trade that star to the Lakers, because the fortune of the universe seems to reward teams that make trades to help the Lakers. The New Orleans Pelicans gave them Anthony Davis. They got the number 1 pick. Dallas Mavericks gave them Luka Doncic. They got the number 1 pick. Now, these are just coincidences, maybe. I'm not saying there's anything foul at play here, because I think it's Ernst & Young, which is like one of the top 4 accountancy firms in the world, who kind of moderate the draft lottery. And if you're saying it's fixed, then you're accusing the NBA, the NBA, who's a $1 billion industry and one of the biggest financial firms in the world, of a federal crime. So I'm not going to do that here. I'm just going to say it's crazy. 1.8% chance. Cool. The odds of the top three being Dallas, San Antonio, and Philadelphia was 0.0114. Okay. That's all I'm going to say. But this is the thing about lottery. This is why everyone plays the lottery in real life, is because even though the odds are insignificantly small, they believe that they will be the one lucky winner. And you're seeing that happen live in the flesh. So I want to ask you guys this. For all of you conspiracy theorists who told me, oh, the Mavs traded Luka away because they're trying to move the team to Vegas, which was a stupid theory, what are you saying now? Because your math ain't adding up. Your math ain't adding up. If they wanted, the Vegas team was always going to be an expansion team. They were never going to relocate the Dallas Mavericks, the fourth biggest TV market, over to Las Vegas. No, the Vegas team will be added to the NBA. The Seattle team will be added to the NBA. These teams ain't moving. So that conspiracy theory, I'm glad we can put that to rest, as the Mavericks now have the number one pick. They have to draft Cooper Flag. I know there's thoughts out there that maybe they could trade for Giannis, maybe they could trade for KD. That would be the stupidest thing they ever do. I kind of feel bad for Cooper Flag because he's not going to get a team built around him. He's going to come in to a team that's kind of already built. I don't know if that's a blessing or a curse, but the pressure is on now to produce right away. But just in the long term, obviously take out the initial, oh, right, cool, you're playing with Anthony Davis, you're playing with Klay Thompson, next season, the season after the next, Kyrie will be back, so on and so forth. Take that away, think about 5 years from now. What's that roster around him going to look like? They're then going to have him starting to enter his prime, and they're going to have to rebuild off that. So it's kind of a sticky situation for Mr. Flag. But to draft anyone else or to trade the pick would be completely and utterly ridiculous. And I can't believe that Nico Harrison would do something like that. I refuse to believe it. I refuse. So that's where I'm at with the draft lottery. You guys know I can't say too much. I ain't saying too much. But, you know, Nico Harrison, if you told the Mavs fans or you told anyone in the world a few months ago, trade Luka for Anthony Davis and Cooper Flag, that deal sounds a lot better than just trading Luka for Anthony Davis. Like, are the Mavs fans who stopped supporting the Mavs because they traded Luka, are you guys going to be back as Mavs fans now? You got Cooper Flag. I don't know. That's all I'm gonna say. It's very interesting. It's very interesting, and the big talks around the player movement this offseason are all centered around Giannis Antetokounmpo and where he's going to be. And there's reports he wants to play somewhere with no state income tax, and he's ready to leave Milwaukee. And, you know, I'd be very surprised if he does leave Milwaukee, but I think it's time. There's no really clear pathway for them to get better around him, especially with Dame Lillard's injury as well. Looks like they're going to have to go into a rebuild, and the only way to do that is to accumulate assets, and they've traded away all their first-round picks. I like Houston for Giannis Antetokounmpo. They need that superstar piece. They've got plenty of young players. They've got plenty of picks. And, you know, obviously their legend of their franchise, Akeem Olajuwon, from Nigeria. Obviously, that's what Giannis' roots are from as well. No state income tax in Houston. I would be keeping an eye on them for Mr. Antetokounmpo. The Spurs, I don't know if I... Here's the thing, right? I love the idea of Wemby and Giannis together. And if BJ was here, he'd be talking about their 7-footers, all 7-foot lineup, right? But here's the thing. You've traded for Fox, who's going to be on a max deal. Wemby, when his rookie contract ends, is going to be on a max deal. Giannis, when his current contract ends, is also going to want a super max. But by then, he'll be 34. So you're then going to have 30% of the cap to Wemby, 30% of the cap to Fox, and 30% of the cap to Giannis. You're going to have a team with absolutely zero depth. Whereas if you just, you know, they got the number 2 pick this year. If they knew they were getting a number 2 pick, maybe they don't do the Fox trade because Dylan Harper's a really good prospect, number 2. But they got the number 2 pick this year. Maybe they slide back a few spots in the draft for another asset or something. But you want to draft players on rookie contracts. That's the only way to really build in the league. You're seeing it with Oklahoma City right now. That's the most sustainable way to build in this league. And that gives you, I guess, the longest run. But at some point, you're going to have to pay all those guys and you're going to have to move them. But I don't know if the finances long-term for trading for Giannis is worth it for the Spurs. However, it does give you an automatic 5-year championship window. Is it worth it? That's up to the Spurs to decide. That's why I like Houston for Giannis rather than San Antonio. But I do think Giannis will be on the move. I think because of what we talked about with the Celtics, Jaylen Brown might be on the move as well. KD will be on the move. There's going to be a lot of movement this offseason. Mooncey will be. Stay tuned to find out. But yeah, that's a little catch up. I've missed you guys. I really appreciate you. There's been a lot of messages in the Discord. I've got a lot of DMs on Twitter and Instagram asking where I'm at. Just know that we're back. We're going to be rolling. So keep locked in with the podcast for the rest of the season. And stay tuned because a lot more will be revealed in the time in the next few weeks. Oh man, 6 a.m. I've forgotten. You know what, yeah, gang? Because if you're still listening, you're a real listener of the show. I took a week off. I didn't do anything crazy in my week off, right? I just, handled some business, put some wheels in motion for other plans, and so on and so forth. But I just saw my friends, ate some good food, just watched the games as a fan. That's why these breakdowns are not like super in depth. I just watched the games as a fan for the first time. And, we've been doing this podcast for years now. This is the first time watching the playoffs that I had a week where I could actually just watch a game without having to make notes of what's happening or think about what I'm going to say on the show later. So I really enjoyed my week off. However, I enjoy bringing you guys the best podcast in the world, even more than that. So we'll be back breaking it down. We're going to have some special guests, like I said, so it's not just going to be me rambling on for half an hour in your headphones. Don't worry about that. I'm excited, and I'm excited to see what the Sacramento Kings do this offseason as well. There's going to be a lot happening in the NBA. So stay locked in with the Hoop Genius podcast, the best podcast, because I don't know any other podcast where 2 of the 3 hosts of the show have been hired as executives in the NBA. There's one other podcast where a guy got hired as a coach. But now there's a podcast where 2 guys got hired as executives. So, whenever the world wants to wake up and realize, and obviously I'm not taking credit for those guys. Obviously they're amazing at what they do. They have infinite basketball knowledge. They know way more than me. I'm just messing around a little bit. But where people go and wake up and realize what we got cooking over here. This is just what we do. So I appreciate you guys. It feels good to be back. And here's to many more episodes. The band will be back together at some point. Don't you guys worry. We're going to have more people coming through. And subscribe to the show. YouTube, Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your podcast from. And until next time, get buckets.